Hey everybody, welcome back to the Smiling Homeschooler podcast. My name is Ben Wilson. Today we're spending some time talking about friendships for moms and for kids. This conversation was prompted by a message we got from a mom whose son is really struggling to find some meaningful connection, even though they're involved in church, homeschooling, and it seems like a community. So we want to talk honestly about why friendship can be harder than we expect, the fears that drive us as parents, and what we can and can't control when it comes to helping our kids build and us build real relationships. Before we start, we want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks for making the Smiling Homeschooler possible. They're the math curriculum that our family uses, and we encourage you to check them out at teachingtextbooks.com. We think they'll help you smile more. And lastly, thank you to Samaritan Ministries. They are a community of Christians that pay one another's medical bills, helping families take a safe step of faith as they feel God's leading in career or in ministry changes or in bringing mom home. And you can learn more at the link in the description. But all right, let's get going. Here's my dad, Todd Wilson.
That sounded very formal.
Well, that's how I always do it. Because not everyone knows that it's you and me if we don't say our names. So if it's someone new,
that's true.
They got to know who we are.
And it probably won't be long before I don't know it's me.
Jeez, that's true. I had to check with him on that tonight.
Say, Dad, you're facing the wrong direction.
Last night we texted about it, just briefly about like what our topic was and stuff. And then this afternoon he emailed me. And his mom is currently going through some memory loss. So I was a little bit worried that, maybe he'd forgotten we had the conversation, and we're just watching closely for it, so.
Yeah. You think that's funny. It's not funny because it's probably true. It's probably true. Well, hey everybody, it is getting so close to Christmas. I can't even believe it. We're less than 10 days as we record this. There's just so much to do. Ben's mom, my wife, said, there's no way I can get it all done. I just can't get it all done before Christmas. We're getting ready to go to my parents, and there's just so many things that need to be done in there. And we haven't even watched all the good Christmas videos yet. So we're in a scramble already, and we're 9 days away as we record this. But hey, Ben and I were just talking right before, if you still need a good gift for your husband, I think, I was a little worried about the mail system because it seemed like it was getting backed up. But I think the loggerhead has broken free, and some of those orders are getting to where they need to go now. So if you still need to need a great present for your husband, you can still get our You to Dad Daily Calendar. We hear all the time what a great tool it is. Dads ask for it. Moms are glad to give them to their men. Or if you want to play a good game on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, you should get our To Bethlehem game. It's a really fun game.
Our kids absolutely love it.
So, Ben, I know you guys slept underneath the Christmas tree, which is a tradition.
Saturday, and it was really fun.
It's been passed down. So, people always ask me, so do you really sleep around the tree? And so, Ben, did you really sleep around the tree?
Not around it. We slept in the living room. The kids were super excited to pull out the, the couch or whatever. So they slept on that. Me and Anders, we slept on a nugget. If you know what a nugget is, basically just a big piece of foam with cloth, and they charge you a ton of money for it. So we slept on that. It does make a decent bed though, but I slept terrible. But the kids had a blast, and it's always fun. So we watched Polar Express that night, and it's always a highlight. But yeah, I am lagging here just in general. Just we have our my mother-in-law always does that big toy drive every year, which if you're a longtime listener, you've heard me talk about before. But that's all been going the last week and wrapping up tomorrow. And I don't know if maybe it's just me, but
just in time for the fair to begin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I feel like when the air is like really dry inside, I feel like when I wake up in the morning, I feel like my eyes are just swollen shut from, no moisture and stuff. So it makes me feel even tireder, even if I'm not, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not that. Maybe I am just that much more tired, but it's pretty, it's just that time of year, I guess. But thankfully, Renly last week was, it was one of those things where I heard someone say my name at night, like Dad. So then I went into Anders' room because it's almost always him. And I go, what Anders? But he was asleep. And so I was like, oh, that was weird. And then I hear Renly yell. And I'm like, well, that means she threw up because there's the only reason that anyone ever does that, So I went in, she had. But thankfully, it was just that one night and no one else got it and no one else has had anything else. So we are praying that continues. So,
but it's not Christmas.
Nope, it's not yet.
I mean,
Still
there
tomorrow.
have been more than one Christmas ruined by, not ruined. I mean, it is what it is. God gives us you the
It's
perfect
ruined, but
time, but it's like where a kid is like, whoa, whoa, and you can hear it in the background, and you're like, I can remember walking down the hallway at night and just feeling something wet on my feet. Like, they threw up in the hallway. So it's a pleasant, but those days soon pass, and you'll be wishing not that you could do those days over again, but that you could go back and start over and do it one more time.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about, or tonight, to whenever you're listening to this, we're going to talk about friendships. And it's kind of a unique thing. We got a Facebook message yesterday about friendships. I'm not going to read it now because I think I'll read it when we kind of talk about kid friendships. But what I thought was interesting is that as the person wrote, they were saying how it's interesting that two dads do this show, and that it kind of gives a unique perspective, which is a funny topic maybe to do as two men, because sometimes men's friendships and women's friendships are different.
Mm-hmm.
And I will maybe do a disclaimer right now is I am not a friend guy. I don't need a lot of friends. If you consider yourself one of my friends, I'll just keep up the charade for you.
Dad is a friendly guy, but not a friend.
People, Debbie will often say, I just feel like we need some community. And I'm like, I can't handle any more community. I've got all the community I can handle in my own home. But I know that to my wife, friends are a big deal. In fact, sometimes she'll say, no, not sometimes, our whole married life, she has said, I feel like I don't have any friends. And that is funny to me. Not funny, haha.
You can see why she gets frustrated.
Yeah, I don't go, oh, tell that one again, honey. No. But I can remember vividly, sitting in my office when I was a pastor, and I was talking to another guy whose wife is always the life of the party. I mean, she's the one who volunteers for everything. She's a part of everything. She seems to run around with everybody. And I can remember telling him, oh, Debbie just says she doesn't feel like she has any friends. And he said to me way back then, my wife says the very same thing. And I was skeptical. I'm like, there's no way she could say that. I mean, your wife seems like she's friends to everybody. And he goes, she may appear that way, but she doesn't feel that way. And I think that's so interesting. And I don't know, Ben, if you see that, I met guys. I mean, I do another podcast, and my co-host, he has some great friends, and he needs friend time. So it's not like across the board. But do you think there's a difference between the friendships of men and women?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
maybe not.
I think there is. It looks different. I don't necessarily know that there's a difference in need. I mean, I think I really value friendships, and I mean, it's made my life, I think, better because I have close friends, and I'm really thankful for that. I mean, I think what it looks a lot different, and what I need from friends is obviously much different.
Maybe go on and say more about that. What do you mean?
With Rissa, and I mean, the amount of time that me and my guy friends talk about like how we're feeling or doing is pretty low. I mean, if it's like a really hard time, we'll have like a guy check in, kind of built into our marriage group from time to time, where we'll share that. And that's really awesome. And I really appreciate that all of the guys are willing to be like, hey guys, I'm really having a hard time, right now with the kids. If you could pray for me, I'm just feeling like I'm losing it a lot or whatever. So we're actually pretty good about that. But the women, I mean, especially as Rissa shared a few weeks ago, she's been going through a hard time, and just having true friends who are, willing to listen for, hours to each other and talk about it constantly, and not, get tired of that is just huge. I mean, it's, and just the amount of connecting they do on an emotional level is way more than us guys. I mean, our times where we feel the closest is like we went on a Spartan race, or whatever. And so obviously our wives aren't doing that.
And never talked.
Yeah. Right. So, it's different, but I mean, I think it's important, but it is tough. I mean, it is so many people out there that feel lonely. I think loneliness is a huge deal, especially with, internet and social media and all that. It's a I mean, they call it, even for young guys though too nowadays, it is, they call it I don't remember, like I don't remember if they call it a pandemic of loneliness, whatever it is, but it's, for that younger, even teens to young adults, like they're extremely lonely. It's just, it's there's a lot of it out there. So it's a real issue. A lot of people feel it.
I wonder if it too, and really, since we're primarily going to talk about friendships of women and then kids, but because that's who's listening to this show right now, women. With the 4 guys who might be listening, I don't know, who are illegally listening.
Yeah.
But, do you think maybe part of that comes because sometimes I hear this, because, friendships for women, they come from, so you're young, you don't have a boyfriend, you don't have anybody, and you have all these girlfriends. And then even when you're starting to date, you're still interacting with all these girls and you've got these friends, and then you kind of cross some kind of line. I don't know if it's a marriage line, I don't know if it's parenting line, but all of a sudden, you have all these other demands on you. And I know my wife has said, I just don't have the same kind of friends that I used to have.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard other moms say that, it used to be just so easy. We'd call up each other and go do things. Spend the night at each other's houses.
Yeah.
And now it just feels so hard to make those connections.
I mean, it takes energy, and if you don't have much energy to give, it can be one of those things where you feel like I'm in survival mode. I just don't have the time to dedicate to that, but I mean, I think it's kind of like one of those things where when you're feeling anxious or you're feeling, sad or whatever, a lot of times, our natural inclination is just to pull in and to not do anything because it just feels easier. But the reality is often more is, making that effort to interact with others or to get out or to whatever ends up actually being a lot more life-giving than you may feel like up front. Not for everyone. There's different personality types and all that, but I mean, it is way tougher. I mean, the amount of times I see, I remember like with our friends group, I used to see people like, it felt like, 5 times, 6 times a week, now it's like I see them once a week, maybe twice if I'm lucky, and it's usually structured around a birthday party or something else. And it is definitely like different as time, seasons of life ebb and flow, and that. But I think that's also natural and to be expected. I think a lot of it is expectations of.
Are there different types of friends? Because I was thinking like casual friends being or those close friends. Casual friends being there's a lot of them. Sometimes you're surrounded by a lot of them, and sometimes. Again, guys are kind of okay with the casual friends, and some ladies are. But I know my wife, she likes close friends, friends that she can share her heart with. And and there were times she would meet someone and they'd say, oh, we could be best friends and we can do things all together. And my wife, when we had 8 little kids, and to me, she goes, man, I just don't have that much time. I can't get together all the time. But I could tell that when she did get together, and she could be real, and the other person was real with her, because I know there were lots of times where she'd say, oh, so-and-so is just on top of the world, and it was discouraging to me. And other times she'd say, oh, so-and-so was just, I could tell she was struggling, and it felt so encouraging to me, just because, she didn't have any glib answers. She didn't have any. They just were able to talk about the hardships of marriage, the hardships of parenting and life.
Well, I think that's the key is realness. I mean, acquaintances is not really, I would say, like true friend in that way. When we're thinking is, where it's like life-giving is someone who you can be just real with, because if you're not, then you're kind of performing the whole time, and that's just exhausting. You're both like trying to uphold this expectation of, oh, I'm just surface level, we got it together, chit chat, whatever. But if you can actually like just be how you are feeling and open, and they reciprocate to that, like that's allows you to get to that deeper level, and is just so much more regenerating, because you're not having to just perform. And I know Rissa was saying that, like, again, these last few months, is she's like, I just can't feel like I just can't fake it right now. Like, I can't be around people and fake like I have it together. But, knowing you can be around friends and not fake it, that shows that they are true friends. And hopefully you have people in your life that, that can, but that can be tough to find people who are willing to, open up and show you the hard stuff too, not just the Facebook side, or the social media side.
Yeah, and I would say to, the mom who maybe feels like she doesn't have a lot of friends, sometimes it is because that they don't allow their friends to be real with them. That they always have the right answers. They always show the happy sides. And sometimes we are not drawn to those people. We like to find people who are just like us. And I think, especially as Christians, we've kind of played this game that we do have to have it all together. We do need to show them the happy side. I remember one person who was a speaker at one time said, well, you just want to put your best foot forward. And I just always thought that seems like a lie. I think you ought to put your real foot forward. And on happy days, you can talk about happy stuff. And on hard days, you can talk about hard stuff. Yeah. But I think, if you want if you want more friends, then just be real. Just try it. The next time you're talking with someone, just tell me you've had a hard time and see if that makes a difference.
Yeah. And I think there's I think that's super crucial. And I think, and if you are real consistently, that I think there is good and bad. It's not just dwelling on, just always being sadness or whatever else it is, but it's super important. And something I'm not always great at is listening and not trying to fix things, which I think is something the women are so much better at. I feel like is just being able to listen to each other. I feel like anytime Marissa is sharing something with me or whoever, I'm like, so am I supposed to be giving solutions right now to this, and am I supposed to give advice or whatever? And I think that's really a great thing for anyone who's good at just listening and understanding and not trying to just fix things, because that's just not what most people are looking for. Right.
Well, I think that's the beauty of, again, men's friendships, men and women, because we do think differently. We are different. I know when Mom was giving birth to one of our kids and the midwife was rubbing her stomach and just saying these think of your stomach as a flower opening up, whatever, and all that. And I can remember Debbie saying to me when she'd leave, she goes, "Oh, that was just so comforting." And I'd put my hand on her stomach and go, "Your stomach's a flower. Let it think, whatever." She goes, "It doesn't work with you." Because we don't think the same. Well, before we get to a commercial, though, I just think it's interesting, too. I was talking to my sister one time, and she said, I've always wanted these friendships. And she goes, but she goes, I've kind of come to a conclusion, or maybe to a spot, that maybe it's not going to be always what I wanted, and I can be okay with that. That when I need encouragement, God can bring that person along. Because I know some moms, they spend their whole life wishing they had something different, and it never comes along.
Yeah.
So, Mama, if you're in that place, can I just encourage you not to give up on the idea of friendship, but maybe to give up on that idea that you have in your head, that you can just let it be natural, that you don't have to put the pressure on when you get together with a mom and like, is she going to be my best friend? Is this going to, didn't work. Nope. And just because even sometimes my wife will say to me, all we did was chit chat. And, and I'm like, chit chat's not a bad thing. Sometimes chit chat, even among husbands and wives, leads to deeper stuff. And sometimes if you don't have the chit chat, you never get to the deeper things. So
I would also say, don't let the comparison creep in. Don't let them or envy of, well, they have a better friendship than I do, and I feel that a lot actually, more so in the past, and it just eats at you, and it is not. It's just so harmful to the friendship, because then you're just thinking the whole time, well, this isn't real, or I feel like they're just so much better friends with everyone else, or everyone else has more friends than me, or everyone else, they go on vacations with their whatever, all that stuff. It's just like, it's so hard, easy to compare your perception of other friendships. And so if it doesn't look like that, it may be okay to just let that image of what you think it needs to look like go. Because I think it's so easy to be discontent in that. But real quick, before we get to our friendships with kids, or our kids' friendships, we do want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks for making the Smiling Homeschooler possible. They're just an amazing math curriculum. Renly, my daughter, started it this year finally and has loved it. So we'd really encourage you to check them out at teachingtextbooks.com. They're an amazing company and amazing math curriculum. Appreciate their support.
Oh, and we also want to thank Redeem Health Share Ministry and Samaritan Ministries for being part of this week's show. As members of Redeem, we're about much more than sharing medical costs. We're a community of Christians that pray for one another, supports each other, and finds strength in our shared faith when you're going through healthcare burdens. You feel the warmth and love of a community that truly cares. Click on the link in the show notes or the description to learn more. Well, Ben, let's kind of turn the corner and maybe talk about friendships with, friendships with kids. Because I got a Facebook message from Amanda. And Amanda says, I've listened to your show for a while. And then she says, I wonder if you could do a show about friendships. My son has a rare genetic condition that stunts his growth severely. He wears hearing aids and is really shy. We're very involved in church. He attends youth group every week. He does a hybrid homeschool where he goes to school once a week to do some school subjects. He has a couple of people he calls friends, but overall he knows that he's struggling to make good, authentic friendships. I always hear the argument that socialization isn't an issue with homeschool families, but I'm just finding that to be so untrue. Real, authentic connections are really hard. My son's condition really limits the things he can take part in, and no one ever reaches out to him. It's really hard to watch. What would you say to the mom whose child isn't finding friendships in their homeschool community? I'm out of ideas on what else to try. I feel like we've tried everything. This is our second year being home, and I know he's lonely. Thanks. Well, Benner, why don't you solve it for her?
Well, part of it, as we were saying, is I don't necessarily know, how much we can just fix just by hearing it, but it's really tough. It's one thing if it's you, I think a lot of people, can handle that to some extent. You may be sad about it, but watching your kid go through something like that is I imagine much, much harder. I think it was important that she said at the end, I know he's lonely, because if he's saying, well, I call him friends, but you don't think they're really authentic, that's kind of, I would say, up to him a little bit if he thinks that or not. I would be kind of surprised, if going to school really would be much better than that. If he is truly struggling, or not struggling, has things that, cause differences in how he, thinks or acts or whatever. I don't seem to think that in school that tends to be celebrated. It seems that often causes more, picking on him and things like that. But in this case, maybe not. But first of all, I would just say, that is a really, really hard thing. And I heart goes out to her just for, I'm sure it's so hard to watch your son trying to navigate all of those hardships, plus then not feeling, very, seen by many other kids.
I think Ben's observations are spot on. I mean, he's a smart kid, obviously great parenting. But, I think he's right about, sometimes we think, if we get him surrounded by a bunch of kids, that would be good for them. I'm not sure. Maybe I should say it even a little stronger. I am sure that's not always the best option. I do think school, any kind of school, any large groups of kids, it can be a rough place to be if you don't fit in. You don't usually find, those people who are close to you. It's accentuated, they make fun of the ones who don't fit in. And so I would resist the urge to think, I've got to get them in someplace so they can make more friends. I talk to moms who have one child all the time, and they're like, I feel like I need to get my child into school because homeschooling, we're just isolated all by ourselves and they need to have more friends. I still think home's the best place for all kids. I just do, especially a kid who has genetic condition, stunts his growth severely, wears hearing aids, and is really shy. I think home's a wonderful place. And I would ask him, I think Ben's other observation about, does he feel the same way that you do? I know my wife. So we have a 17-year-old who, we're in the midst of busyness, and my wife says to me all the time. She said it today. Oh, I feel bad because Jed doesn't have anything to do today after school's over. And I'm like, and I said, well, why do you feel bad? And she goes, because he's lonely. And Jed has said many times, I'm not lonely. I'm okay. You know, quit worrying about me. If your son says that to you, I'm okay, then he probably is okay. Because sometimes they don't need as much as you think they might need. Now, I'm not making light of that. I'm not diminishing that loneliness. And I know, and I'll say to everybody else right now, make sure your kid goes up to this child if they sees him, or anybody else in a homeschool co-op or in a youth group, and just encourage your kid to say hi, to include them, to say, hey, do you want to come sit with us? Do you want to come do this with us? Because I know when you're shy, it's easy to come into the room, go to the corner table, and not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to, encourage you to tell him to be bold. But I have a couple kids. Ben was one of them who he would include those guys. My son Cal, he is super good about including the ones who can seem a little awkward or super shy or don't like to play the games because they're not very good at them. And then I would also say, like I already kind of mentioned, that home's a good place, the best place for your kids. Because what I want for my kids, is that their circle of friends would come from their future families. I want Ben to find satisfaction in his family, and I know it's okay to have other friends, but if he doesn't have any other friends, I want him to be okay with the friends he has in his own family, because those other friends kind of disappear. They move away, and they're like, I don't get together with any of those guys that I hung around in high school with, or, those casual, relationships. And either does my wife. But the people who are around us, my family, I want my family to be where I get my joy so that my kids can get their joy from their family. Ben, you want to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, couple things. Yeah. I think, not panicking or not, assigning, like making him feel like there's even more wrong with him just because you're worried about it. If he feels your confidence in him, I think that's huge. If you make it clear that you think he's awesome, which I know you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a mom, you're gonna, but not leaning into, the world's view of someone, I think is huge. I mean, there are so many people that I was just watching a video of Adam Sandler, the comedian, which he's not the kind of comedian I love watching all this stuff, but he said his big brother was his just biggest encouragement. They shared a room and he just was always encouraging him and everything. He said he finally was like, hey, I'm going to take you to a comedy club and they're going to give you a 5-minute set to stand up there. Have you prepared anything? And he's like, no, I'm just going to wing it. And so he gets up there and he wings it. He's like, I don't remember a single thing I said. It was terrible. Afterwards, he's like, his brother said, you were great. The crowd loved you. You were so funny, but maybe just next time you should prep a little bit beforehand, but you're doing a great job. And, he was just saying how a great encourager he was. And I think if a parent is that cheerleader, I think that's huge. I would also say, just giving it time, not reacting. A couple years feels like a long time, but those are really tough years. He's like 14 maybe right now, which is like are pretty hard. I mean, you're going through, adolescence, like, puberty, all that, like during that time, that's probably your most awkward period potentially. So, things might take a little bit just to settle out and, just build up some confidence, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I think, again, the connection is super hard, whether you're in real school or not. Just because you're having those opportunities, I don't think means that you're just like, boom, you're just going to have all these friends just because you're around a lot of people. And it's like me, it's like, I'm going to have more people that I talk with no matter what opportunity I'm in versus, my brother Abe, who just, is not going to, even if we're around the same amount of people. It doesn't mean that, he didn't have those opportunities. So, And some people, it's just going to be different. I think that's okay to know that. I don't know, but otherwise, I think just keeping doing what you're doing, or at least for a while, and not throwing it all away just because it's not seeming to instantly work out, I think is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think a mother's heart wants to feel sometimes deeper than even your child might feel. I know Ben would have been a kid who would have had a lot of friends, in a regular school. I have a couple other kids who would have a lot of friends in school. Honestly, I'm glad they didn't have all those friends, because I think it would have diminished their friendships that they have with their siblings right now, and which are forever relationships. They interact, live together, not in the same place, but they live in proximity, and it's a beautiful thing. I think your son's going to be okay. You just keep loving him, and like Ben said, just keep building him up. When he feels lonely, let him talk. And maybe you invite other people.
I mean, you're going to keep doing these things, and eventually he is going to find someone, who's going to want to, be his friend, and they're going to be friends, and it'll, and then you won't even have to worry about it. But it takes time, and you just don't ever know when that's going to connect with someone. So yeah.
I think that's a good place to stop. Well, I'll say have a great rest of the week. This is the time. If you haven't stopped homeschooling, you should, because these next
for the Christmas season, you should not stop homeschooling as a whole.
not in general. Yes, not forever, but until January 1, because this is a season where memories are harvested. This is the time to do those things, wrap presents and bake cookies and, play games and check a few videos off your list or movies off your Christmas list, and just enjoy family together, because really the best memories, my best memories, most people's best memories, 80% of them come from Christmas time. And wouldn't it be a shame if we had them with us as we homeschool and we missed them because we were too busy doing school? Because I will tell you, about 0% of good memories come from math lessons or English lessons or any of those other lessons. Well, have a great week, and let your smile be your guide.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy our show, please leave us a review on whatever podcast app you listen on, and also share it with a friend. That's a great way to help spread the word about the Smiling Homeschooler. Again, we want to thank Teaching Textbooks for making this all possible. If you already use Teaching Textbooks, maybe shoot them an email or leave them a message on their website. Just say thank you for supporting the Smiling Homeschooler. Also, we want to say thank you to Samaritan Ministries, a community of Christians that pay one another's medical bills, helping families take a safe step of faith as they feel God's leading in career or in ministry changes or in bringing mom home. And you can learn more at the link in the show notes. But have a great week, and don't forget to smile.